In a bright and beautiful forest, there lived a small black crow named Caw. Caw was not like the other birds. He was not colorful like the parrots. He was not graceful like the eagles. He was not musical like the nightingales. Caw was small and black and ordinary looking, and he had a dream that every other bird in the forest thought was completely impossible. Caw wanted to reach the top of the great mountain. The great mountain stood at the edge of the forest. It was the tallest thing anyone had ever seen. Its peak disappeared into the clouds so high above that nobody had ever seen the very top. No bird had ever reached it. The eagles had tried and turned back. The hawks had tried and given up. Every strong, fast, powerful bird had attempted the great mountain, and every single one had returned saying the same thing. It is too high. The winds are too strong. It cannot be done. But Caw had looked at the great mountain every single morning from his small branch, and every morning he felt the same thing. A pull, a certainty, a quiet voice inside him that said, I need to go there. So one morning, Caw spread his small black wings and said to himself, today I will try. When the other birds heard that Caw was going to attempt the great mountain, they laughed. The parrot laughed so hard, its colorful feathers shook. The eagle, the great eagle who had turned back from the mountain himself, looked at Caw with disbelieving eyes and said, little crow, even I could not reach the top. What makes you think you can? Caw looked up at the mountain, then back at the eagle. I do not know if I can, Caw said quietly, but I know I have to try. The nightingale sang a mocking little song about the foolish crow and his foolish dream. The other small birds tittered and whispered, and Caw stood at the base of the great mountain, small and black and completely alone, and began to climb. At first, it was not so bad. The lower slopes of the mountain were rocky but manageable. Caw flew a little, walked a little, rested on ledges, and kept going. The forest below began to look smaller. He could see his branch from here. He could see the other birds watching from far below. Some had stopped laughing now and were just watching. Caw kept climbing. Then his wings began to ache. Not a little ache. A deep, heavy, tired ache that spread from his wingtips all the way through his small black body. Every wing beat felt harder than the last. This was the first challenge. Not the mountain, his own tiredness. Caw landed on a rocky ledge and rested. He breathed. He looked up. Then he looked at his tired wings. And then he stood up and kept going. By midday, Caw had reached the middle of the mountain. He stopped on a wide ledge and looked around. Below him, the forest looked tiny, the trees like small green dots, the river like a thin silver line. Above him, the peak was still hidden in clouds, still far, still enormous. And that was when doubt arrived. Real doubt, the kind that does not shout, the kind that whispers, you have come so far already, it said. Nobody expected you to get this far. You could turn back now and it would still be impressive. You have already done more than anyone expected. Why keep going? Caw sat on the ledge for a long time. Looking up, looking down, the doubt whispering quietly. And then Caw thought of something. He had not started this climb to impress anyone. He had not started it to prove anything to the eagle or the parrot or the nightingale. He had started it because of that quiet, certain voice inside him that had called him to this mountain. Every single morning, that voice was still there, still quiet, still certain. Caw stood up and kept climbing. Higher up the mountain, the air was thin and cold and completely silent. There were no other birds here, no voices, no sounds from the forest below. Just Caw and the mountain and the vast empty sky around him. Nobody was watching anymore. Nobody knew if he kept going or turned back. Only Caw knew. And in that moment, Caw made a decision. Not for the eagle who had laughed, not for the parrot, not for any of the birds waiting in the forest below. just for himself, because the quiet voice that had called him to this mountain every morning, that voice belonged to him, and only him. And it was still saying the same thing it had always said: keep going. So Caw spread his tired wings in the cold, empty air and flew. The last stretch was the hardest thing Caw had ever done. His wings were exhausted. His small black feet were numb from the cold. Every part of him wanted to stop. But the peak was right there, visible, real, close. One more push, one more beat of his small, tired wings, and then Caw landed on the very top of the great mountain. He stood there alone in the silence above the clouds. The entire world stretched out below him in every direction. The forest, the river, the other mountains, everything small and golden and beautiful in the evening light. Caw stood on the highest point anyone in the forest had ever reached. And he made one small quiet sound, not a triumphant screech, not a proud call, just the sound of someone who kept going when everything said stop. When Caw returned to the forest the next morning, the birds were waiting. They had watched him disappear into the clouds and had not expected to see him again. The eagle stood very still when Caw landed on his branch. The parrot had no more laughing. The nightingale was quiet. They looked at Caw, tired and wind-worn in his small black feathers, still slightly ruffled from the mountain, and they knew. The eagle walked forward slowly. How, he said, how did you do what I could not? Caw looked at the great mountain in the distance. I did not do anything special, Caw said. I just did not stop. The eagle was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded slowly and said nothing more, because sometimes the most powerful answer is the simplest one. From that day forward, Caw was not famous. He did not become the biggest, or the most colorful, or the most powerful bird in the forest. He was still small, still black, still ordinary looking. But every morning when the other birds looked at the great mountain, they thought of the small, black crow who had stood at its base and said, I do not know if I can, but I know I have to try. And they understood something they had not understood before, that the ones who reach the top are not always the strongest, or the fastest, or the most gifted. They are simply the ones who never stop. You do not have to be the biggest. You do not have to be the fastest. You just have to keep going.